Hi, John. I hear you.
Hey,
Yeah, how you doing?
doing well. How are you?
Good. It's nice to meet you. I'm John Small.
Likewise, great to meet you, John.
How do you? Len will probably be joining in 2 seconds.
Okay.
Uh, how do you know Len?
It's actually through my co-founder Rob Fess knows Lynn. Yeah, so I
Okay.
didn't get the full background because Rob's traveling today. But I guess they're acquaintances in a previous life, and
Okay.
they reconnected, and he was telling about what we're doing, and here we are. So yeah,
Awesome. I'm
yeah.
letting Len in the room right now. So we co-host this podcast together. It's called Everything is Personal, and Len is there in his glory, all his glory. Looks a little. There he is.
Oh my
Hey,
God.
Lynn.
What's up, John?
How are
So it's going to be confusing because it's John and John, but we'll just make the best of it. You can call me Kid Finesse. If you want.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say usually people, if there's two Johns, sometimes they just call me by my last name,
Right.
which is
And
always
I'm the
easier,
JON
right?
kind of John anyway.
Yeah.
Your
But
last name is Manlove.
It is, yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a great last name. So
I
much
know.
better
Great.
than
It's a
small.
great name for Pride Month too.
Yeah. My dad always said, you just tell people it's your stage name, and you're good to go.
Right.
When I was little, I had no idea what the hell that meant, and then as I got a little older, I'm like, oh, you were telling them that I was a stripper when I was like 8. Okay, I should probably maybe hold back on that.
Very, very
My
appropriate,
kids.
Dad. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Oh man. Well, that's a great last name. So Len, do you want to talk to John about how this all works?
Yeah, sure. So we'll introduce the show. We'll then introduce you as a guest. I'll do my best to make an intro. Then you can talk about an extension of that intro, ask a couple questions, just free form conversation, and then we ask our guests 3 questions usually before we end. Has to do with the experience with cannabis and things of that nature. Nothing major. And then once that's done, you can leave the Zoom and we just continue talking about our stupid
We
stuff.
talk about you. We talk
Most-
about your last name.
We're going to definitely talk about you. You should know. We
Yeah.
always do that about, I guess. Definitely a last name sets up a whole bunch of different jokes that John is already writing. I can see in his head.
As if you haven't heard any of them. By the way, my last name is Small, so let's be real here.
Yeah, we got
Heard my fair
we've
share.
heard everyone in the book, right?
I've heard everyone.
Yeah, but then you had Biggie, right? And you had Biggie Small. Like,
Yeah, but that wasn't until I was older. I wish Biggie Small was around when I was 10 years old. Then I go, yeah, I'm like Biggie.
Like, oh, then you're trendy and cool, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Not that you're not.
they always call like the big guy like tiny, all that stuff. So you could have been like the ironic Small.
it's true. I call my son Biggie Small because he's enormous. He's 15 and he's 6'4". So he really is Biggie Small.
Yeah. No kidding.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to count you off, Len, and then you will introduce yourself and me and the other John, and we'll be good to go. So let me press record here and press record here. And hold on a second. Let me just redo that for a minute. All right. So 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. As always, my lovely co-host, Mr. John Small.
Hey, everybody. It is so great to be back and very excited about the episode today. And sorry about the abbreviated clapping. The audience was not told to clap. There they go. There they go.
I thought you were going to do a bong hit when I introduced you.
Yeah, well, we'll do that after we announce our guest.
All right. So our guest. Yes, we have a guest. We didn't have a guest last week, but we have a guest. So our guest is Mr. John Manlove, right? CEO and co-founder and founder of Apex Trading and Bushel 44. Dude, I'm so off today. I'm sorry, John, because I literally was running to make it because I was stuck in another meeting. I was stuck in traffic. I'm like, am I going to be late for my own show? So I apologize a little bit.
That's okay.
So
All good.
welcome.
I'm glad you're here.
John. Yeah.
And you,
Happy to
you don't
be
look,
here.
I can only see a little few beads of sweat on the top of your head, but
Is it other sweat? Yeah.
yeah, you look great.
I look shiny a little bit, right?
Yep. John, welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Good to be
So
here.
John, let me just preface one thing. The main reason why I wanted to have you on the show, we don't really know each other, but we have a acquaintance in common who works with you, Mr. Rob Fest. But my interest has to do with taking acid in Alaska. Is this something you can expand on? Because I'm super interested in that. I don't care about your company. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
I'm just curious about that.
Let's get to the juicy stuff, right?
Yeah,
let's just start this thing off with a bang, and no better way than Aurora Borealis acid in Alaska, right? So
hey man, I have ADD, so my mind is gonna go. It's gonna go in different directions all the time. But let's just start with that.
let's hit it, right? Acid. Wow, nothing against psychedelics. Big fan of them, right?
Right.
And as I look back, maybe there's certain places that they shouldn't be, and that's probably in the workspace, right? So unless that's what you're doing for your
Unless you're microdosing, maybe.
yeah, unless maybe you're doing some micros, right? So I think Rob and I, you mentioned, we had the pleasure of entering the cannabis space and launching the first online wholesale marketplace in 2014 called Tradive. One of the founders of that company, a good college friend of mine, he called me and said, "Hey, I'm going to start the Amazon of weed, come be part of it." And I said, "Well, hell yeah, man. Why not?" So that sounded great. So you jumped in, and around 2016, as we had built a pretty big company, we had 35 employees. We had raised about $4.5 million. We were Inc. 30 under 30 company winner. The founder was, he got married and decided, I'm gonna go to Alaska and take a little journey. So him and his wife went up to Alaska. I get this call halfway through his trip, and it might have been the trip to Alaska and his psychedelic
the trip, right? I was going to ask, what trip?
And he goes, "John," "something crazy happened." I'm like, "What?" He's like, I feel like I've got Jesus and Hitler possessing me, and they're fighting in my body, and I'm not sure which one to go with, and this whole thing. And next thing you know, he comes back from Alaska and thinks he's the next coming of Jesus on the planet. So we're talking like full robe, pilgrimage to Jerusalem, big wooden cross, stop shaving, rope sandals. He went all in. He was serious.
Wow.
And you think in a workplace, coming up, and that can kind of disrupt a little bit of confidence in the staff and the team. So we were in San Diego at the time, and I moved down to San Diego about 2 weeks after that journey from Portland, and tried to help save the company a little bit there. But it was quite the interesting phone call and experience there for several weeks when you got a founder who thinks he's God, right? So
yeah, I think I went to visit Rob at that time in San Diego, and he didn't tell me what was exactly going on, but he said we have some stuff going on internally within the company, but he didn't tell me that the CEO became Jesus or born again.
And it's unique that I've had several conversations with people outside the space and investors, et cetera. And I guess, this happens every once in a while. A founder kind of falls off, a CEO might fall off the rocker a little bit and dive into some psychedelics and maybe change their perception of who they are and what maybe they are in the world. So I guess that's the thing about trying to balance life and work a little bit better and take care of oneself. But, to each their own. Some of us find going down the rabbit hole for drugs is a great way. Other ones say, well, maybe I'll just work out, meditate, eat better food, So
yeah, I mean, you basically get to hit the same part of your brain when you meditate, if you're doing it the right way too. But I find it fascinating because my company does DNA testing to help somebody with a personalized experience with their endocannabinoid system. But part of that, we're looking into psychedelics now too. And it's so interesting because some people are predisposed to getting, a psychotic like episode. And if they already know this in advance and they take, whatever a hero's dose is for that individual, well, that shit can turn itself on, and it can manifest itself as, Jesus in this case, or he could have went the other way and went with Hitler. So I think you hit. It was good that he went with the left or right. I don't know, John.
Went with God.
John Small. Which one, right or left? Which side is
I think right side is the creative side, right? even right. Although now they're finding that isn't true. But yeah, I think if I was struggling with Jesus and Hitler, it would make me a wreck, and probably nobody would win. It would be a horrible trip for about 8 hours.
That's what they say that when you're doing psychedelics, a trip, there's no such thing as a bad trip, even though some people may experience it that way. They say basically whatever it is that's trying to get through, that's the message that you're getting. So if the message you're getting is scary or frightening, you got to dig deeper and explore that, and not just stop at one. But some people get stuck in that, and now I know there is some treatment that people are doing with ketamine and with MDMA and other substances to help people get past that hump. So sometimes people get into this hero's dose and they're stuck in that side, but they needed to explore deeper. Like I recently had an experience with DMT. So I went into that journey, the first journey that I did. And by the way, I didn't do my hero's journey yet because I'm scared of it, but I'm scared of it for a reason. The first one, I felt like I was falling off a ladder and I was trying to hold on to rungs and I was just falling. There was no end. And it felt, you know what it felt like? If I can do an analogy, I felt the same way, getting naked and jumping into ice cold ocean. You get that, that whole thing. That's what it kind of felt like the entire time. And there's no sense of time. You don't know where you are and all that stuff. So the second time, and it was like right after the first time, it wasn't like 2 separate days. That wasn't enough. I have to do a little more because I wasn't going far enough. And the second time I closed my eyes. I lost all sense of reality. I didn't know where I was, but I saw these geometric shapes. I have no idea what they mean. I don't know nothing about it, but I went in that. And I was told, did you see those little creatures or whatever they talk about? I'm like, no, but you got to go further. And then some people get stuck in that and turn on the switch. They're in Jesus mode, but maybe what it is, it's an entry into an exploration that they have to kind of go further. And then, like I said, some people are just scared and they get.
That's why it's important to have a guide, because when you're alone in that, you might just be like, can somebody get Hitler out of my left ear? I don't know. That was the problem. Is the first time I really tripped, I didn't have a guide. I was with a guy who I barely knew, and we were walking in the streets of Manhattan when it kicked in. I did everything wrong.
Your guy was your friend. He's like, hey man, let's just take it.
I didn't even know.
Let's go to Times Square. Let's do acid and go to Times Square, which is the worst.
Yeah, horrible idea.
Walking around downtown, and there was a guy I was trying to improve. He was like a book agent, and I wanted to impress him. So I was like, yeah, I'll do shrooms with you. And and he actually said to me, he just turned around in the middle of it and he said, I just saw Jesus. And I was like, oh my God, we got to get back to your house. And then I think the whole trip was us trying to find his apartment. It was like a bad Martin Scorsese movie. We couldn't like get to his apartment. I couldn't get back to where I had started from. But anyway.
It's so much of like going into it with a purpose, right? So I think, you can't just like abuse psychedelics in a way. I think there's a lot of examples of people who have, right? And they don't necessarily end up the better for it. But I think it's like, are you mentally sound going into it, right? And I think that if you had, I think in this experience, and maybe in my personal experiences too, when you have a lot of personal things going on, like the stress and anxiety of being a CEO and building this company and doing all these things, and you get married and all of that, maybe going into it, and maybe there were other issues that I wasn't aware of, that culminated in him having this issue, right? But I agree. I think it's one of those big DMT fan personally for myself. When I discovered that, drug, I guess is what you could call it, but I think the spirit molecule, right?
Hey, we have it inside of us. Right? We produce it. It's
one of these amazing. It's one of those things that. For someone who likes to be in control a lot of the time, 5, 6, 8 hours is a hell of a long time to journey into my own stratosphere, ultimately ending up in my own head, right? And with DMT, it's that 20, that 10 to 20, 30 minute kind of experience where you can go in and maybe see that thing, that creature, that spirit animal, whatever that is, or you're in the fractal universe of boxes falling all over you, right?
It was that for me. Yeah. But you hit the nail on the head. I first of all, it's set and setting, and I don't want to just talk about psychedelics. We're going to talk about your company and all that stuff. I'm just curious, so I'm just kind of going with the flow. The thing that is interesting, I'm a person who likes to control as well. I'm a CEO of a company, but also I like to be in control, and being out of control is scary. But sometimes we need to be out of control to be able to let go of that stuff, because that's the whole journey. And as it's getting that intention, setting up from what is it that you want to do. And like the fear of it is for me, it was a loss of control. That's why I felt like I was falling, because, oh my God, something's taken over. I can't control my situation. And usually when you take substances, that was always my thing. It's like, I'm going to be calculated with what I do. If I'm going to do LSD, which I haven't done like in many years, but then I did again, I'm going to start with a little dose. I'm going to see how it goes, and I'll do it. And I'm always scared and cautious to do like a hero's dose right up in front. But with DMT, I don't think there is much of a choice. You are getting on a roller coaster and you're going to go. There is no, you're going up, but you're going to go down. And there's no, you can't hold on to anything. And that's the whole experience, which was like, let go.
The blast off is quick and it's real, man. And it hits you bad. You're like, whoa, what, you know? And I think it's the same. I guess you could equate this to like edibles, you know, when you eat your first edible, you're not probably popping a 500 milligram, right? You're probably going to start with that 2.5, ease into it and see, right? Let's not start with the hero. And then you're like, I'm never doing that again.
Maybe you know? There's some people, you know, it's funny because, and we talk about this all the time. You know, there's some people that are poor metabolizers, right? So if that's the case and they do an edible, John, they do an edible, like for me, I'm good 50 milligrams. I'm good. I have a friend of mine who works with me. 100 milligrams is nothing. Like she'll do 100 milligrams and it's cool. I have my business partner and John, he goes, we're doing gummies. He takes an ear off a gummy. He's like, oh man, I'm so high, I'm done. And this is personalized experience with anything that you do. So yeah. Anyway, where did you go?
Let me ask you one question though. Some people who tell me that I was interviewing a pretty well-known, I can't even remember his name, a guy writes and talks a lot about psychedelics. And he was saying that the trip like he had from eating too many edibles was so much more intense and in his case, unpleasant than the trip that he had when he's done like mushrooms or psychedelics. Have you guys have a similar experience?
You know, I've had a experience where I've eaten maybe that homemade brownie that you had no idea how much had in it, mostly like in high school days, right? Where you're just like, whoa. And then you're on the couch and you literally feel like you can't move, like you just can't get up and you're just sunk and you can't talk and just you're spinning, you know, you feel like you're close to blackout drunk, but you're just really high, you know? So I've had that, but it's been a while, I guess, since I've experienced. I think I had one or two. I'm like, okay, I'm going to kind of ease off. Maybe I'm that guy who metabolizes pretty quick too. And it hits me like a ton of bricks. I can smoke a joint all day and be fine. But sometimes those edibles just for me, you know?
Yeah. So I'll answer it this way, John, from a scientific standpoint, it has to do with what other predispositions you have. So if you have a predisposition to psychosis, a psychotic-like effect, or stress reactivity, and you take that cannabis edible, it can actually turn that switch on. So that switch can be like, holy shit, it's not just the edible, how it's affecting my body. It just turned on a whole bunch of other things that I didn't know existed. Certain psychedelics don't affect you in that way. They hit different pathways. So you don't have the same kind of expression. It was psychedelics having a trip. It just a very, very long trip, but you know what you're going to expect going in for the most part. You know, for me, I've had, I don't want to call them negative and positive, but pretty intense experiences with psilocybin. And it's because I didn't know how much I was taking, as John was just saying, that brownie, but somebody gave me this round medallion and they said, hey, and plus with mushroom, it depends on what type of mushroom you're using. There's different mushrooms that have different amounts of psilocybin and different kind and all that stuff, and they affect you differently. But for me, I have this weird thing that happens when I have a intense trip. It affects my body temperature. I start freezing and I'm trying to get warm, and I don't know what it is, but it's something that has to do with something that gets flicked on, and I get really cold. And I have to lay down if I'm having that experience, but I want to be in nature. So it's this dichotomy, like I want to put on winter clothes in the summer and sit outside and sweat while I feel like I'm cold. That's a really strange experience, but it's personal. Everybody has their own thing. But I do believe that people go into a psychedelic experience with at least expectations that they're in for a long ride. They're going to have an intense experience. I don't think people realize that eating a gummy may cause them to have a very intense experience.
It seems so innocent. They're little bunnies. And little gummy bunnies and you're, oh, sweet gummy. And then, you're couch locked for 5 hours.
I'm going to talk about that. That's another topic about the Pensacola mom thing, but I'll talk about it. I don't want to take up, John's time on this. So anyway, John, where'd you grow up?
I actually grew up in Branson, Missouri. Yeah, so right smack dab in the middle of the Bible Belt. That's where I grew up. Went to college at Drury University, a small private school, and then 2 weeks after graduating, moved to Portland, Oregon, and have no intention of going back. So, yeah.
You like living in Portland?
I do. Yeah, I've been here for 11 years now. The city has changed a lot in 11 years, as I think most metropolitan areas have across the country. Some for the good, some for the bad. I always tell people, though, I was in Oklahoma last week. It was really funny. I was there for CannaCon and get in my Lyft, and he said, "Where are you coming from?" "Portland." He's like, "Portland, Oregon?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Ooh, stepping into enemy territory now. You got to be careful around here." So I was like, "Oh, and then of course, everyone in Oklahoma thinks it's shown on Fox News is what happens in Portland, and I
didn't know what you were referring to. You mean like the demilitarized zone of
the capital
anarchy?
Yeah, they kind of look at it as like, okay, here's Oklahoma. It's a kind of a deep red state. Portland people don't want to be here. You guys are all, crazy leftist liberals or out of there or burning the city down or, whatever it might be. And I think that there's not the best, I guess it's a kind of false conception around what actually is going on out here. There's a group like everywhere, but overall, I mean, the city is, it's Portland. It's what it's always kind of been. We speak out. We have a big voice and long protest history, and that's just part of the blood of the city. So.
Yeah,
I'm hoping now that the world is going to open up again, that we'll venture out of beyond our Fox News and Sinclair News or whatever. Even if you're watching MSNBC, this sort of bias, right? Like that an Oklahoman would have about a Portland person, because all somebody from Oklahoma has to do is visit Portland and vice versa, and you're like,
right.
The hype is so not true,
Portland's pretty weird, I have to admit.
Portland's weird, but it's a great city. It has great food. It's got
sure, of course.
I've never been, but I hear wonderful things about it.
Dude, the cannabis, the beer,
the beer, the food, the women. Oh.
I was telling you're like our second guest in a row that's from Portland, and I was just telling John and my previous guest, I forgot the name of this place that I stayed at last. It's something Fur.
Doug Fur, the Jupiter
Hotel. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's that place. So this to me is a perfect culmination of what Portland is. So you can see it's the room, and I was describing last time. So our hotel room, first of all, it had a mural of Spider-Man from like the floor to the ceiling, all the way to the ceiling where he's got webs everywhere. They gave you condoms right on your nightstand, so you can practice.
That's very
it's very progressive, right?
Some people do the Bible, and other they condoms.
Well, they had a Bible. They had the condoms on the Bible.
Right, that's Portland.
Kind of covering both. And then the place itself is so oddly decorated. It's super random. It looks like a log cabin, and they have a Sasquatch. They have a player piano and like modern stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty weird. It's cool. I dig it, but I don't know what style they were going for. It's just like a bunch of random stuff.
Yeah, it's quintessential Portland. They have the concert venue down below. Did you go?
Which was so cool, right?
Which is awesome. Yeah. A lot of those venues, I think they're just now opening back up. So I know all of us out here are just chomping at the bit to get out and see some shows, see some music,
Yeah, I have a good friend of mine that lives there. He's a chef. So he was taking us to some amazing restaurants. So I had great food, I had great cannabis, and listened to some good music. So to me, it's great city.
That sounds like heaven.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about like how you went into this Amazon kind of lead, and then it sort of transitioned and formed into Apex Trading from Tradive, correct? Oh, how was that transition?
Exactly. So we were with Tradive, which is that company, we started in 2014, ended up winding the company down in 2017 after one founder had his religious epiphany, and the other founder got in a little trouble with an employee for having a relationship with her, right? Which I think is a big no-no, right? Typically.
Oh, is that wrong?
Unless you start the company with your spouse, you probably don't want to start, having relationships with your employees. So that, ended up kind of not working out so well, and kind of left a few of us kind of up a creek without a paddle, we said, we've entered